Hi everyone, I am Ali from DIY Kurdish. In this video I am going to show you how I make a wall clock from this walnut slab. If you watched my earlier videos, I made some tabletops for a cousin of mine. If you haven't watched them yet, you can do so now. And I am making a wall clock from the same tree. When my cousin brought these slabs, he asked for 3 tables. I pointed out to him that this small slab would make a good wall clock, and he thought it was a good idea. Making a wall clock is something I have never done before, and while it's not hard, this one gave me a headache. I started by sanding the slab on both sides. I use angle grinder because it sands quickly and the saw marks are quite deep. However, in order to prevent sanding too deeply and creating noises on the surface, I tried to keep the sanding disc flat to the slab's surface. Because using a grinder to sand is so dusty, I moved the weight outside for both my health and to keep my workshop clean. Additionally, I wore an air plug and a mask for this task. Although wearing glasses is also safer, but I forgot to do so. My cousin brought a wall clock so that I could use the handles and the clock mechanism. I used the clock's face to mark the location of the mechanism after disassembling the clock. I wanted the clock to be in the center of the slab, but I was unable to do so due to a large void in the middle. As a result, I placed the clock on the side. I used this drill stand to drill a straight hole after making the location of the clock mechanism. Although I was unable to complete the hole by the stand, it is good enough for keeping the drill bits straight for the hole's completion. Next, using the hole as a guide, I marked the location of the clock mechanism on the opposite side. Because I dug deeply and left insufficient width on the face, the router damaged the mechanism's location. I believe this was caused by the large router bit I used and the high speed which I operated the router. When the mechanism and clock handles were installed, I didn't like it. I sent my cousin a picture of it. He didn't like it either. I made the decision to cover the damaged area with a piece of wood from the same tree in order to repair the damage. Here I used a hand plane to flatten the piece before cutting it off the camera. Then I used disc sander for shaping it. After that, I positioned the piece over the damaged area and marked where a router groove needs to be made. Because it is difficult to control and the router may cut over the line and leave a gap, I avoided the lines when using the router so that I could use a chisel for finer shaping. After using clamps to glue the piece, I let it sit for a day before unclamping to continue working on it. order to flatten the piece using the hand planes, I purposefully made the piece a little bit thicker. I had to drill a new hole because the router had destroyed the previous one, and I marked the location with this piece of paper. Then I put the hands and the mechanism on place and tested the operation of the mechanism by adding a battery. It is time to start treating the numbers now. But first I called my cousin to find out how he wanted the numbers. I thought he would pick something similar to this or this, but he asked for Roman numerals. Thank God the only numbers he requested were 12, 3, 6, and 9. Despite the fact that it's challenging and requires time, I said to him by all means. Initially, I intended to create a template for the numbers using this 2mm thick MDF. I used a screw saw to cut the numbers, being careful not to cut through the lines, so that I could use small files and chisels to create the final shapes. However, the numbers came out too fragile. I abandoned this idea as this shot makes evident I was unable to shape it. As an alternative, I wrote the numbers on this cardboard and used scissors to cut it. I like the contrast between the white oak and the walnut, so I chose this piece of white oak for the numbers. I used my table saw to cut it, then I marked it with a pencil after placing the cardboard numbers on the white oak. I used cardboard numbers for the X and V's in my number making, but I just used a ruler for the eyes. I used coping saw, scroll saw, table saw, and hand saw for cutting the numbers, just to give some options. My favorite thing about woodworking is how many options there are for a single task. If you don't have expensive tools, you can use hand tools instead, but they require more practice and take longer to complete. Even with these cutters, I avoided the lines so that I could use disc sander, chisels, and files to shape the final product. Here I mostly use the disc sander for shaping, but I also use the files and chisels for the interior lines of X and V's. This X was broken in the middle when I took it out of the vise. It was boring to write, cut and shape another one, so I just glued it back together. Now it doesn't have any problems and you cannot even tell that it was broken before. I marked the locations of the major numbers after placing the numbers using the clock face. I then numbered each piece to make the process of gluing easier, and I marked the locations of each number with this little knife. I used a router to create the grooves after marking the locations of each one, and then I used a chisel to finish the grooves. I then glued every number. As you can see, I didn't engrave the numbers too deeply, so they would above the surface, so that I can use hand planes and chisels to later flatten them with the surface. I am relieved to have completed the number making process. It was challenging, particularly without a CNC, but I like the outcome. After completing the numbers, I begin sanding with an orbital sander. I start from 80 grit and work my way up to 400, marking the entire surface with a pencil in between grits to ensure that no areas are missed and to prepare it for finishing. Because of the dust, I worked outside while doing this. One advantage of orbital sander is their ability to be attached to a vacuum. I always use this tool with a vacuum attached because it has two benefits. First, it keeps fine dust from getting stuck between the sandpaper and the surface, allowing for better and faster sanding. Second, it is safer for your lungs. Then I sanded the live edge by hand in order to preserve its beauty. I cut out a space for hanging on the back, but somehow I lost the footage. That's how I made it. I used a piece of MDF that was fastened inside the groove using screws and washers. And this is the exciting part, applying and finishing. I also used the same oil that I used to tabletops for finishing. I started applying to the back, turn it over, and then apply to the surface. I love how this oil on walnut highlights all the wood's textures and grains, and it's also simple to use. I applying the oil with a clean cloth first, letting the wood absorb it for 15 minutes and then wiping off the excess with another clean cloth. And the result is amazing. After that, I put the clock's mechanism and hands in place. I hope the outcome pleases you. I have wanted to make a wall clock for a while, and even though my mistakes made it challenging, I really like the finished product. I hope you do too. Please let me know in the comments if you like it or have any pointers. And please subscribe my channel if you would like to see more videos like this. Thanks for staying till the end.